Hi, hello, welcome back. If you're new here, my name's Maddie. I like to read books, that's about it. And for today, I'm going to be completing the book series that I'm currently in the middle of. I actually made a part 1 to this video a couple months ago. Yes, it's been a couple months since I've revisited this, and I'm pretty sure I read Magnolia Park's Into the Dark, so I finished the Magnolia Park's universe, at least what has been published so far. And I have just accepted the fact that I am always going to be in the middle of many book series all at once, so it's a never-ending cycle. Today I'm going to be finishing the Remnant Chronicles series by Mary E. Pearson, the first book being The Kiss of Deception. You may recognize the spin-off duology more, which is Dance of Thieves and Vow of Thieves. I want to read that duology, but I want to read this series first to understand all the world context behind it. But I think I finished The Kiss of Deception last month or the month prior. I rated it 3.5 stars. I liked it, but it also felt like very much a 2014 book at the same time. And in that way, it felt nostalgic to me because I was a reader during that time. But also, I feel like this book fell victim to a few 2014 tropes that may have not aged well. But I really like the latter half of this book. I feel like it surprised me in a way that I was not expecting at all. And the very ending of this book was super intriguing. So I am excited to read the second book of the series, which is The Heart of Betrayal. I'm going to keep this video spoiler-free as possible, and it's just going to be some cozy reading vibes of me reading this series. This book is 467 pages, so I do have my work cut out for me a little bit to finish this book, but I feel like the writing style, and because it's a YA book, it's very easy to read, it flows together, so I don't think I have any problem finishing this book this week. I'm also a fast reader, so that helps me too, and I will also try to be reading and finishing the third book of the series as well, which is The Beauty of Darkness. This book is big. It's 677 pages, so this one might take some time to get through. I'm excited to get into this series again and finish it, and I'm also excited to eventually read the duology Dance of Thieves and Vow of Thieves because I've been wanting to read that duology for like years at this point. Ever since it got really popular on like YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, it's been on my radar. I just never got into it until now. But anyways, without further ado, I'm gonna get to reading. Wanted to give a quick reading update of The Heart of Betrayal. I'm literally almost halfway through this book, if you can't see by my tabs, and literally read 220 pages basically in like one sitting. Without giving any spoilers, I will say that this book, the way it starts is so much more interesting than how The Kiss of Deception started. Like with The Kiss of Deception, it was interesting enough to read, but I also felt like not that much was happening at the same time. I wasn't like completely invested until the latter half where it started to pick up more. But I feel like with The Heart of Betrayal, based on how the first book ended, you are in the situation in book 2, so it's a lot more interesting to read about because there's more at play, there's more stakes, and I don't know, there's just more things like happening that are a lot more interesting than what happened in The Kiss of Deception. This book and or series does have a love triangle, which sometimes is like a hit or miss for me, depending on how the author writes it. And all I will say on that is I have a favorite, and if she doesn't end up with him, I'm gonna be mad. The love triangle doesn't annoy me that much because I feel like at least in the main character's mind, there's like not really an obvious choice between the two characters, if that makes sense. Like, I always think of Twilight and Edward and Jacob, and Bella obviously was so into Edward. Even when she was kind of with Jacob, she was still thinking about Edward. So was that really a love triangle if the choice was so obvious? I don't really think so. I don't know when this book was published, but I know that the first book was published in 2014, so I assume this was like a year or two after that point. And I feel like it does still fall into some of the 2010s annoying fantasy YA tropes, like the main character, the FMC. She's a little bit of annoying. I feel like she's definitely better in this book than in the last book, but I don't know. I feel like if you're going to read a book in the 2010s, definitely things that happen in books published during that time that you kind of just have to give into, if that makes sense. I read a lot of this book really fast. I'm much more invested in book 2 than book 1. We'll keep on reading. I probably won't finish it tonight, but I might finish it tomorrow. So we'll see. Yesterday, I lied. I actually lied twice. My first lie was that I was probably not going to finish The Heart of Betrayal last night, and I finished it last night. It's been so long since I've read a book basically in like 24 hours. Also, for my second lie is about the love triangle, and I thought that the choice wasn't that obvious. Unfortunately, I was wrong about that. But let's start with where I left off in the book. Like I mentioned in my initial update, this book was so much more interesting than the first book, The Kiss of Deception. I like the side characters and the villain in this book much better than in the first book. Sorry, Pauline. Also, I just feel like the plot and the politics were a lot more exciting and interesting to read about in the second book. The FMC, Leah, I felt like she was a bit more strategic in this book, which is always fun to read about. She also made some dumb decisions, but once again, I feel like that's just a flaw of a lot of main characters in the books that were published in the 2010s. And she's like 17, so I don't know, it kind of makes sense. I feel like we all made dumb decisions at 17. Now for the love triangle, my initial update, I was like, oh, I'm so glad that the choice isn't like that obvious between the two love interests. It's more exciting to read it that way. I feel like I was a little bit wrong about that, and I fear that I have liked the wrong guy again, which I feel like isn't my fault, because if you're gonna give the wrong guy the more interesting character arc and storyline and character development, why wouldn't I like him more? I don't know. I feel like the other guy's just so boring. I hope I'm wrong and it ends up going in my favor in the third book, but I'm also trying not to be too hopeful because I feel like I'm going to be disappointed again. One last thing about this book is just the magic and/or magic system. You do learn a little bit more about the intricacies of the magic, but I feel like it's not very fleshed out again in book 2, but it kind of makes sense because the main character is also learning about it at the same time, so it makes sense that we as readers don't understand too much about the magic system because the main character doesn't also understand all the inner workings of the magic system. But alas, I wish it was a little bit more fleshed out, but maybe I'll be wrong and it'll be more fleshed out in book 3, so we'll see. Also, the ending of this book was kind of wild. I didn't expect it to take the turns that it did. In hindsight, it does make sense, but at the time I just wasn't totally expecting them. I'm going to start book 3 today, which is The Beauty of Darkness. It's the last book in this series. I literally can't believe I finished this book in one sitting. Oh, I totally forgot. I ended up giving this 3.75 stars. I liked it more than The Kiss of Deception, but I don't know. Still had a little bit of issue with some of the things that happened in this book. I'm both scared and excited to read the third book because I don't want to be disappointed, but I feel like I might be disappointed. So we'll see. Another reading update of The Beauty of Darkness, which is the third and final book of the Remnant Chronicles series. I have been flying through this book, zooming through this book. I literally have like a third of it left. And this is one of those books where I've been reading it fast and I feel like it's easy to read and it flows together, but also at the same time I feel like not much has happened. Like I mentioned with the second book, The Heart of Betrayal, I felt like that book was so much more interesting and exciting just in terms of the plot and the new side characters and the new villain. And I feel like all of that was removed in this book. There is a plot and or an idea of a plot, but I felt like it took a long time to actually get there. I feel like the first 50% was just the characters kind of just vibing and hanging out, as weird as that sounds. And of course there's just some drama between certain characters that did have me excited for a few moments. But when I think back of what happened, especially in the context of me talking about this book and updating you all about it, I'm like, what even did happen that's worth noting? I thought with what the direction book 2 was going in and how it ended and the reveals that happened in that book, I thought book 3 was going to be more exciting and go in a different direction, and so far it hasn't really gone in that direction at all. And instead it went in probably a less exciting direction. But it makes sense, but it's less exciting. Also, the more and more I read of this book, the less excited I get about the outcome of the love triangle, because it's not going in the way that I wanted it to go, and I'm really sad about it. And unfortunately, I feel like I know how it's going to end, and it's not going to be in my favor. I'm just going to have to live with that, and it's going to be sad for me personally. Given how quickly I've read this book and just the series overall, I'm definitely going to finish the last third of it tonight. I think I have about 200 pages or less to read, and I do want to find out what happens at the end, but we'll see. I finished The Beauty of Darkness yesterday, and all I have to say is that I liked the wrong guy again. I'm going to keep this as spoiler-free as possible, but I feel like it's kind of hard because I'm literally talking about the last book in a trilogy. But one thing I can say is that this book is nearly 700 pages long, and I don't think it needed to be that long. I honestly think if like half of it was cut out, we would have gotten the same exact story, but everything would have happened in a more timely manner. Another thing they'll say, and it's my final point about love triangles in general, is I feel like sometimes authors don't know how to end a love triangle without making one of the guys in that triangle say some like disrespectful things and shoot themselves in the foot as a love interest. And it just feels so out of character for that character to be disrespectful when like the first 2 books they were a generally nice person. Also, without going into too much depth, there was a lot of things that happened in book 2 that I thought were going to be a bigger deal in the final book, and they just weren't at all. And I feel like questionable decisions were made and questionable romances were made, and just some things just didn't make sense overall. I don't know, I wasn't a really big fan of this book. It just felt kind of disjointed from the other 2 books. Honestly, if it was like under 400 pages, I probably would have rated it higher because it was so long and a lot of fluff was added and some things didn't make sense, or I wish some things happened differently than the way that they happened in the book. I ultimately didn't really like it. For now, I'm going to give it a 2.5 star because of that. But I don't know, maybe I'll bump it up later, but right now I just feel like disappointed by the things that happen in this book. If you want my full review of this book and just the whole series in general, all of my reviews are on Goodreads, and I include spoilers in those reviews as well, just FYI. But if you read the series before and you're wondering what specific things I'm talking about, go to my Goodreads review because I talk in greater detail there. I think for my final ranking for the series overall, the best book in the series, in my opinion, was The Heart of Betrayal, which is book 2, followed by The Kiss of Deception, which is book 1, and then probably, at no surprise now, my least favorite book was the third and final book, The Beauty of Darkness. But I am glad I read the series. I liked the first 2 books in the series. I thought they were entertaining and fun, and I was invested in them. The third book doesn't exist in my mind right now. I am excited now that I have read this series and finished it and understand the world and the context and all the characters. I can finally read Dance and Vow of Thieves, also by the same author, the spin-off duology of the series. I feel like everyone rants and raves about that book and the duology overall, and I'm excited to see what I think of it. Who knows, maybe I'll do a reading vlog of me reading that duology soon. That concludes part 2 of me completing series that I'm in the middle of. I'm excited that I got to mark at least one series off that list, even though I'm probably going to start another series in place of that, and it's just never ending. But if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Feel free to like, subscribe, comment, anything like that. If you want to follow me elsewhere, I'm also on Instagram and TikTok, the same account name, MaddieRead6. And until next time, I'll see you later.